All right. Hello, YouTube, and welcome to a new segment here on the channel, Friday Focus. An episode I'm going to try to bring you every Friday is just a particular topic that I find interesting or that you in the community have offered to me as something to talk about. And this week, we're going to focus on something that is very close to me as a new vendor within the hobby. And that is top 5 lessons that I have learned as a new vendor that I want to pass along to those who may be starting the hobby or even have been vendors for a while but might be looking at some different things that others have learned throughout their process. I have learned a bunch of lessons in the past 2.5 months of vending, and I wanted to pass along some of that knowledge to all of you. So the first thing that I want to pass along is the importance of investing in your setup. It really does make a big difference. There are some essential items that you have to buy, but there really aren't many that are required to be a vendor. As long as you have cards and money, you could technically be a vendor. But a few things that are really, really important to invest in are card cases. You can buy the minimum $80 to $100 card cases off of Amazon, and that is totally okay. There are several companies like Zion Cases now that provide really solid cases that are portable and easy to kind of build upon as you continue to build your collection. And then there are the old school jewelry cases like I have that you can find on eBay and Amazon that are just awesome. But the biggest thing with cases is if your initial outlay for cases, any sort of video equipment, if that's something you want to do, or tablecloths, as we're about to talk about, if those $100 investments or $200 investments seem like a lot, then maybe vending Pokemon is not the thing we should be doing right now. That's not to say you can't buy and sell and trade Pokemon cards for a profit, but if you're not able or not willing to drop at least $200 to $300 on a nice setup with cases, then it might not be time to start vending. You're going to be doing thousands of dollars of deals, and you need to have somewhere to put and display those cards. Your cases are such a critical part, and it's something that I just wanted to emphasize. Really take the time to buy those cases and put in the effort to make sure that they look nice within your setup. Another thing is a nice tablecloth. It can be personalized like mine. We'll get to branding in a minute, but honestly, a nice tablecloth is something that is almost essential because of what it provides you. First off, it makes your display look a lot nicer and more professional. Second, it also allows you to utilize the space under your table more efficiently. And something you're going to realize quickly is if you only have a 6-foot table, you're going to run out of space fast. And by having a tablecloth, you're more safely able to put things under your table and not have to worry about someone either kicking them or stealing them or just reaching under and grabbing them, because they're not going to see them because of the tablecloth. A lot of places do not provide tablecloths, so that is something to always keep in mind as you are starting to vend. And really having that extra storage is huge. The third thing is make sure you invest in a rolling cart or some way to transport your cases and your cards to and from your table at events. I have a huge rolling cart that I bought off of Amazon. It fits 3 cases, 2 of my card briefcases with my slabs and my top loaders. It fits my signs, tablecloths, a chair when I need it. Some venues don't provide you with a chair, so I have a little folding chair to sit on. That rolling cart will hold all of those items, and it is crucial to be able to transport everything in one shot if you're working by yourself, or even just 2 shots if you're with another person, because you don't want to be running in and out to your car, 5 or 6 times before and after each show. It will really get old pretty fast. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about, which is huge in a setup, is branding. Now, that can show up on your tablecloth. It could be signs. It could be hats and shirts like I have on now. But something that I think is important is having people recognize you. And it's easier to do that when you have some sort of branding. It doesn't have to be immediate. This isn't something that you need for your first card show. But if this is something you're saying, hey, I'm going to do 10 card shows in the next 2 or 3 months, it might be worth it to invest in a little bit of branding. I know people recognize my logo and my dragon here a lot more than they necessarily recognize me. And when they're looking for my table, they're looking for that sign. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, the actual lessons for vending. The second lesson here, and the biggest lesson for the actual vending portion, is that inventory is king. It is so hard as a new vendor to acquire inventory. And as you start as a new vendor, you'll realize pretty quickly that it is the buying, not the selling, that is difficult. People are at the card show to buy your cards. Not necessarily your cards, but some cards, and they are there to make trades and deals, right? Otherwise, why would they be there? So they're going to buy stuff. You need to aggressively seek inventory at the beginning. I see a lot of people start their card show experience with very small cases, very few cards. I've seen videos where people are arriving at a card show paying over $100 for the table and they have $1,000 in inventory. How are you going to make money if you have no inventory to sell? Yes, you'll be able to buy cards, but it's better to have some inventory and then worry about buying the cards than it is to just show up and hope people are going to choose you of all people to sell their cards to. Remember, most of these shows you're going to are going to have dozens, if not hundreds, of other Pokemon vendors. So be smart in sourcing your inventory, but my personal experience was if you go to shows and walk around and try to get some people to sell you bulk purchases for 85 to 90%, there were plenty of vendors that were more than open to that, as I was offering them $500, $1,000 to purchase a bunch of their singles and slabs. That initial inventory is something that you might lose a little bit of money on. That's okay. You do not need to make money on your initial inventory. What your initial inventory needs to do is get you in the door. From there is where you are going to make money. If you're breaking even on your initial inventory, that is a huge, huge win. So that's something to think about. And it's especially tricky now that the market is kind of on a downturn. It does make that part a little bit harder. And with your inventory, you want to diversify a little bit. Do not exclusively go in with your personal collection. This has a couple of problems. One, there's a sentimental attachment to your personal collection. It's harder for people to let go of cards that they've held for 10, 15, 20 years. Two, you're going to have too much specific stuff to what you like. And while what you like is a good guide for what other people like, I love Articuno. If I showed up to a show with 100 Articunos, there's probably not too many people in that show that want those specific cards. But if you diversify a little bit, it'll allow you to make some good deals. The last thing is, as people are getting back in saying, oh, I have this big childhood collection, vintage, meaning 10, 15, 20-year-old cards, move slowly. They're great cards. I love picking them up. They are a little bit more stable in the market, but they move slowly. So you got to be careful just coming in with vintage. You want to have at least some modern at your table as well. So some cards that I recommend to pick up for your initial inventory. So Crown Zenith is a great set. There are so many good cards in Crown Zenith, but Suicune, Entei, and Raikou V are three cards that are constantly moving at card shows. Any evolution in the $20 to $50 range, there are a lot of them. That is something that you always want to be looking for. I'll pop a few examples up here on the screen. Your 151 IRs, your Squirtles, your Charmanders, your Charmeleons, your special illustration rares, Venusaur, Blastoise, Charizard. You are never going to go wrong with your Generation 1. You want to pick popular Pokemon, Gengar, Mew, Mewtwo, Charizard, evolutions, any legendaries, right? Rayquaza comes to mind, Kyogre, Groudon. These are all very cool and important Pokemon. Starters are great. And then I'm going to emphasize this. Pikachu, Pikachu, Pikachu. You can find Pikachu cards from under $1 all the way up to ponchos, which are tens of thousands of dollars. So there are Pikachus for everybody, and everybody in this hobby likes Pikachu for the most part. Not necessarily everyone's going to collect them, but a large number of people are looking for Pikachus. So that's something you always want to have at your table to start. All right, now this is one that I learned very quickly with my first one or two shows, was don't chase deals. As a new vendor, I was so worried that I just wasn't going to get any deals and that it would be hard to find good, reasonable deals. Fortunately, that's not the case. I didn't know that at the time. So there were a few deals within my first card show or two that I really regretted. Not that I lost massive amounts of money, but I just clearly thought to myself, man, I made that deal because I wanted to make a deal, not because it was the right deal. So don't force yourself into deals just for the sake of making deals. You have to stick to your margins. You have to not feel pressure to make the deal. And honestly, that's the most powerful asset you have as a vendor, right? The whole idea is that someone is coming to you trying to sell a card, or someone is coming to you trying to buy one of your cards. You have what they want, a card or money. And it's up to you to hold the line to give the appropriate amount. I'm not saying to rip people off, but you need to make sure that you're not sitting there and feeling pressure to do deals at 80, 85, 90% just for the sake of making a deal and convincing yourself that, well, I'm going to get 100% for this eventually, because 100% is not guaranteed. And you never know what 100% is going to be a week or two from now as the cards are going up and down like crazy. You also want to be very transparent with your customers. If your customer's asking for something reasonable and you don't feel comfortable doing it, I always tell people, hey, I think what you're asking for makes perfect sense. It's just not for me. There are a lot of deals that I don't take that I do know other people will. And that's fine. If it's not for you, don't feel pressure to take the deal. Just go ahead and say, hey, go shop it around. This is what I can offer. If you find a better deal, go for it. Sometimes they come back. You'd be surprised. All right. The other thing is, despite this caution, you are going to make bad deals. Making a bad deal is inevitable. There are so many factors in the market, it is impossible to tell what cards are going to go up, down, sideways, or whatever. So you're going to make some deals and then look back a month later and be, man, that was a bad deal. The main thing is to look back and say, well, I did everything right, it just didn't work out. And what you want to be able to do if you make a mistake is learn from that experience. In my first card show, I bought a bunch of PSA 10s for 85% because I didn't have a lot of PSA 10s and I just wanted some. So I spent close to $800 on a bunch of PSA 10s. Some of them sold, some of them didn't. I probably lost a little bit of money on the deal. And I just learned I don't need to chase the deal that hard, right? I can look and say, well, 85% is too rich for me, even if the cards are awesome. The other thing is, when you make those bad deals, just learn and move on. As long as you're learning, you're going to get better and better and better at this. It's amazing how much I feel I have learned just from 2 months of doing this pretty much every weekend. Something I also want to point out is volume is key at the beginning. If you are a new vendor, you are not going to generally be one of those vendors who's holding the Poncho Pikachus and the first edition Charizards and can live off of making 1 or 2 deals a show because you're making $1,000 on every deal. I noticed that when you are looking at English cards and modern cards, you turn over a lot of your inventory each show. In a good show, I will look at my case and say, wow, most of these cards weren't here at the beginning, and most of the cards that were have sold. You're going to buy and sell a lot. Pokemon margins are small. A lot of times you're talking about 10 to 20%, sometimes 30%, which in the grand scheme of things for margins is not a big margin for most products. But with Pokemon, since they're collectibles, you're going to keep churning them over quickly. And if you're making $5 to $10 a deal, that's great, but that means you're going to have to make 100 deals to make it worth it. And that sounds crazy, but in the course of a weekend, it's very easy to make 100 deals. And if you make $5 to $10 on each of those, there you go. If you have larger margins on bigger cards, say 50 to 100, well, you still need to make double-digit deals. You're still talking about a dozen deals, 20 deals to really be worth it for your show. The more deals you make, though, as a beginning vendor, and this is something I've noticed, you make more deals, you get familiar with more customers, you get more word of mouth, people start to send people to your booth, people start to talk about your booth, and you start to see those repeat customers coming. So if you're someone who's just starting out, my biggest recommendation is volume, volume, volume. And at the beginning, I would highly recommend, if you are still making money, to take a few deals that might not be the best. If you have 20% margin on a card and someone's offering you 10% margin and you're only going to make $10 instead of 15 or 20, you might want to take it just to build that rapport and that relationship and start to get that news out there of, oh, hey, there's this new cool vendor in the shows that is someone I may want to work with again in the future. And the last thing is, as you are doing this, you do want to set yourself a goal and figure this out as you go to your shows. The vendor that I initially thought I was going to be is not the vendor that I'm turning into, and that's okay. As I'm learning more and more about the clientele that I want to work with. Generally, I really enjoy working with people who are looking for cards for their binder or for personal collections, which puts me in a different bracket than someone who may be looking for $1,000 worth of cards or Poncho Pikachus or first edition Charizards. Do you want to be a high-end vendor, a sealed vendor, a raw modern card vendor, or a raw vintage card vendor? Again, graded cards. These are all different things. All of these are viable, and ideally at the end of the day, you'll end up being pretty adept at all of them. But when you are starting your vending journey, it is almost impossible to know all of these markets. I don't know the sealed market. I've been burned on a couple of deals I've made for sealed in the past. I'm getting very adept at the modern market, and I'm working hard to learn the vintage market. Because again, I like to deal with people who want cards for their binders. So I am becoming a quick expert on the moderately played vintage market because that's something that I want to deal with. I, on the flip side, will pass on a lot of high-end 10s. If someone comes to my table with a gold star that's a 9 or a 10, I might pass right now. But if someone comes with a gold star that's a 4 or 5, I might take it because that might be something that I'm able to sell. And generally, I like to keep my inventory with cards under $1,000 right now. Hopefully that will, again, continue to expand. But for right now, that's where I feel comfortable. And most of my cards are $100 and under. There are a handful, of course, that are over that. But I like to, again, churn lots of volume, and that's who I like to be as a vendor. It doesn't mean that's what you have to be. I wouldn't go in with this decided. I would come in with an idea of what kind of vendor you want to be. And as you do your first few shows, it'll become pretty apparent who you like to deal with and who you feel serves your business the best. And that's what I've found in the people who enjoy the cards under $1,000 for the most part, under $100 even more so. So this is just some advice. These are 5 things that I've learned. I hope you learned something from this video. I appreciate anyone who took the time to watch it. And I just want to do my normal sign off here, because regardless of if you're a vendor, a collector, just someone getting into the hobby, collect what you love what you collect, and I'll see you in the next one.